core al-Qaeda is a shell of its former self. We decimated the al-Qaeda leadership that attacked us on 9/11.
It continues to be clear to this day that core al-Qaeda has been decimated.
So the administration and the president making it sound like al-Qaeda has been dead and buried for some time. But what about this guy? He's the head of al-Qaeda in Yemen today, claiming responsibility for the attack in Paris. And they're not the only al-Qaeda offshoot we have to worry about today. Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North, Fox News military analyst, wrote the book Counterfeit Lies, and my guest now out of Washington, D.C. Colonel, good morning to you.
Good morning, Bill.
A lot of concern, as you can see. The French have really stepped up their anti-terror campaign. Expect to see that go on, and now you've got concerns about us here at home. What do you think we need to know and do?
Well, first of all, it was a lie when they first spoke those words. Core al-Qaeda doesn't make any difference. There's offshoots and franchises of al-Qaeda, which are all part of radical Islam, words that this administration cannot say, won't say. And obviously, if you don't know your enemy, you are going to lose. Sun Tzu wrote those words over 2,000 years ago. Here's what we really need to be doing. And Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Martin Dempsey, told this to Chris Wallace the other day. We need to play away games. Well, that's a no-brainer because we always want to fight our enemies overseas so we don't have to fight them here at home. But he talked about the suite of U.S. capabilities, intelligence, more partners, and direct action. But the United States, we, and our allies have very little human intelligence. In other words, the human that we need would put people into those cells so that they can report on what's really going on. Because the terrorists have learned, all of them, you don't communicate with cell phones, satellite phones, or the internet anymore because they know we're listening. And on top of that, we don't collect intelligence because instead we kill them with Hellfire missiles, to include American citizens, by the way, with missiles instead of capturing and interrogating them. Our partnerships, the best partners we have in the region are, one, Israel, and number two, second best, is President al-Sisi in Egypt. And yet this administration gives them the back of the hand and threatens them both for God knows what reasons. Direct action is great, but we won't even put special operations forces boots on the ground. So it's good to know what we ought to be doing, but we're not doing what we ought to be doing.
Back to core al-Qaeda.
The result is it's growing.
Back to core al-Qaeda. Krauthammer, Charles Krauthammer on that. Listen here.
The administration just is always focused on what it calls core al-Qaeda, as if you can ignore all the other elements, all the other scattered Islamist groups around the world, and you denigrate them as JV. That doesn't wash anymore.
That whole phrase now is being seen in a different light, and it's not just Iraq, Afghanistan, parts of Pakistan, Syria. It's Nigeria and it's Chad. And now you've got this group in Libya claiming that ISIS has established a safe haven there as well in the eastern part of that country, kidnapping 21 Christians. That's the report we're getting there.
Yeah. And you just imagine what they're going through right now. I mean, you and I have both seen footage that we will never put on the air, shot by ISIS cameramen as they butcher Christians all over every bit of the territory that they've captured in Syria and Iraq. Look, this is radical Islam. It's a franchise operation. It is not simply al-Qaeda. It is Boko Haram. It is al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. It is al-Shabaab in the Philippines. They resurrected Jama'at Islamiyah. It is a global operation. It is radical Islam. It doesn't matter what the name we give it, as long as you understand this is radical Islam globally. What we ought to be doing, quite frankly, focus on protecting the American homeland. And that means reinvigorating the Joint Terrorism Task Forces and encouraging intelligence units like the one in New York where you are. Ray Kelly created it in New York. It's now been abandoned by the de Blasio and Bratton. It's all designed to keep tabs on jihadis, sleeper cells like the ones in the Islamic Jihad organization that threatened my wife and children and targeted them back in the 1980s.
Yeah, and
they're doing it again.
And quickly, just to put a fine point on this, in terms of a strategy, and I understand and appreciate what you just said about New York here, but it seems to me that you're saying intelligence right now is the critical factor that we do not have, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think there's a bunch of other parallels. For example, we now know for sure because the French had absolute gun control. And they're stunned that these automatic weapons were in the hands of terrorists. Well, gun control does not work as a strategy for dealing with terrorists. It just disarms the public. And by the way, the Islamic terrorists have learned not to communicate electronically before they attack. They'll still put it up on a Twitter feed or whatever afterwards.
Their tactics are changing as they see us respond too. Colonel, thank you. It's good to have you back on our program. Ollie
Thank
North,
you, Bill.
out of Washington.